Anyway, let's just grab something from the drinks trolley. What do we have, Suze? What are you giving us today, please?
I'm going for a black lager. Ooh,
really?
Yeah, exciting. Yeah, so it's like a lager, but it's black in colour. It's called Amplify Your Sound, and it's a classic. It's a take on a classic German beer, which is a black lager. So yeah, find it out.
Very strange. Does it look like stout then? Presumably.
Yeah, it looks like stout, but it tastes like lager.
Well, interesting.
Brewery.
Something exciting from the drinks trolley. Very good. Today's confession is a little bit of a shocker. I think it comes from Thomas. I've changed a lot of names here, even though it goes back to 1967.
Wow.
Matt, Simon, Susie, and the simply wonderful team at Greratest Hits Radio. This goes back to 1967, and I'm asking for forgiveness from my mother. I haven't actually forgiven or forgotten what she did, although we are good friends, and obviously I'm her son, which is debatable at times, though. And so it's the April of 1967. My mother dropped my elder sister at school in London, complete with her straw boater and fancy uniform. I was taken to junior school with my younger sister. Nothing much of note yet, says Thomas. This was obviously before mobile phones and emails and the internet. But when school finished, the teacher escorted me and my sister into the playground so that we could be collected by my mum. We waited and waited and waited and waited, and we watched out for her, but she never arrived. Eventually, my dad had been contacted and he arrived to collect us. I must mention that my mum and dad were separated at the time. My dad was deeply concerned that my mum hadn't collected us as arranged, and so he took us to my mum's mum, who said she had no idea where her daughter was either. Well, wasn't this a curious thing? Well, here's the interesting but difficult part to tell you, and after 57 years, I can't forget that day, and neither can my sisters, as you're about to find out. You see, my mother was seeing a second-hand car salesman. And you're thinking, well, okay, I mean, my parents were separated and so on.
Yeah.
Well, Holly or Susie might actually forgive me, and for the first time ever forgive someone, but it won't be my mother, because what transpired was that my mother, without telling anyone, had emigrated to Canada.
What?
Wow.
With the second-hand car salesman. She left 3 young children, all under 7, without telling anyone, without telling her mum. I'm 64 now. This was 3 months before my 7th birthday. She didn't return for 18 months. She sent cards for birthdays and Christmas. Thanks a lot, Mum.
Wow.
I seek forgiveness for her because this affects us all on a daily basis. I've tried asking her why, and she said at 21... is an interesting answer.
Okay.
At 21 with 3 children under 7, she couldn't cope, and her boyfriend was really hot as mustard.
Right.
And so she had to go. Even now, she dismisses what she did. Will Susie or Holly forgive me? I doubt it, but I need to tell someone, so I'm sending it to you. So there's clearly a bit of therapy going on here. But as I'm halfway through, I was thinking, okay, I don't know where this is going, because often you can tell where a confession is going to go.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. The reason why Thomas' names changed and siblings weren't picked up is because the mother had emigrated to Canada without telling anybody. And that's pretty much the whole of the confession. So, I don't know. So what Thomas wants is forgiveness for his mother. So obviously Thomas has done nothing wrong. Forgiveness for his mother. And Susie, you have the enviable job of going first.
Well, I have so many questions. I don't know how could you drop your children off and then just get on a plane and emigrate?
Boyfriend was hot as mustard. That's the reason.
True. But I just feel like you've got to have that conversation. Do you not confide in any friends, or I don't? Maybe you don't have a relationship with your ex-husband to be able to have that conversation. But I feel like maybe you should have. I don't know Thomas's mum. I don't know what I can do here, but maybe there was enough reasons as to why you need to do it, and you wouldn't have done something that big without just reason. So maybe for that.
What? So there might be a good reason.
I don't know. I just feel like you've got to have. I can't forgive her.
Boyfriend was hot as mustard.
Yes.
Well, maybe he was really, really, really good looking, and I don't know.
It's the proverbial second-hand car salesman. We've gone to Canada. Brother Matthew.
I mean, no, I love that. What a great story. What a great twist. Didn't see that coming.
No.
Being hot as mustard, though, I mean, overrated. It only lasted 18 months, isn't it? Clearly not that hot boyfriend with the second-hand cars. I'm probably, I don't know whether I'm going to forgive on this one. This could be a first. Normally I can find some way of forgiving, but leaving a kid to going off to Canada for 18 months because he's hot as mustard. Oh, hot as mustard boyfriends, they're the worst. So for that reason, I'm afraid unforgiven. Unforgiven Thomas's mum.
Oh my goodness me. Okay, people's verdict, what do you think? What do you want to say to Thomas and to Thomas's mum? 61054 for the people's verdict. But before the news, a shocker of a confession from Thomas, which basically revolved around a story from 1967 when he, his elder sister and his younger sister were dropped off at school by their mother, who then emigrated to Canada with her boyfriend, who was a second-hand car salesman, but just didn't tell anybody. With all the implications that flow from that. I think it's been fairly busy on the people's verdict.
Huge reaction tonight. Loads of verdict. Overwhelmingly not forgiven. Not forgiven, says serve to Thomas's mum for abandoning your children. Hot as mustard, boyfriend or not. Shameful. Hashtag hot as mustard.
Is that going to be a hashtag that's going to catch on, do you think?
Is hoping. Not forgiven, says Andrea in Somerset. I think the only person I would move to the other side of the world for would be Daniel Craig. And even then, I don't think that this could be forgiven. Wow. And Pippa from Suffolk says, later than usual school run today. Hey kids, let's listen to confessions. They're always hilarious. Now both the children are mildly traumatised after that one.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, and thank you for the verdicts. Thank you, Thomas. You get the smart speaker. If you have a confession for us, send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. But first of all, we need to have some sustenance. What are you choosing from the drinks trolley today, Sister Susie?
Well, it's a bit strong, it's a bit pokey, but it's very delicious. It's an Iford Cloud Gazer hazy cider, 5%, slightly sparkling, quite traditional cider, but very delicious.
Okay, maybe for later. I don't think that's a very responsible drink for me to be having right now.
Not right now.
We have some important business to attend to in the company of Mike, who sends in today's confession. Father Simon, Brother Matthew, Sister Susie, and the Holy Gathering. Recently, my wife and I, shall we call ourselves Mandy and Mike, in order to protect my dignity and my wife's embarrassment, took a holiday at a gorgeous resort in Malta. We'd had a pretty stressful time of late with family issues and illness, that kind of thing, and the week there was going to be a time of rest and relaxation, the perfect opportunity for us to enjoy each other's company uninterrupted and discuss our potential retirements that are looming ever nearer. I'd planned to surprise my wife with a nice welcome gift such as champagne and chocolates, but due to the busyness leading up to the holiday, the plan had fallen by the wayside. However, I wanted to say a huge thank you for the constant care that she shows and support that she gives to our elderly parents and many children and grandchildren. Anyway, we settled into our room with a bottle of Prosecco that we'd bought at Aldi in Valletta en route from the airport. And we began to feel a little more chilled and relaxed. A second bottle was duly... Oh, okay, we're going early on this.
Wow.
When I realised I hadn't locked the hire car. I quickly rushed out to the large car park, but got a bit confused as to where I'd parked it. The 2 glasses of alcohol without any food for 6 hours had taken effect. Doing the maths, that means Mandy has had 4 glasses. Okay. However, after a few minutes, I found said vehicle, locked it, and returned to the hotel room, or attempted to. Rather embarrassingly, I had to ask at reception for my room number as I'd forgotten it, and the door entry cards were not the standard key. It was just like a card without the number.
Oh, those
you know
ones,
how
yeah,
it goes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to take the stairs. As I approached the 4th floor, I began to have brain fade again, and the 4-digit room number started to get all mixed up in my head. Thinking I was on the correct floor, I exited the stairs and proceeded to my room. However, facing the stairs door was a very large, fresh and delicious-looking cream gatto.
Ooh.
Suitable for 10 to 12 people. Just sitting there on a shelf, my mind started to race at the thought of such a delicious-looking cake. I resisted with all my might to not even take a small flick of cream, but the seed had been planted. What was such a delicious cake doing there, just sitting there? I left the scene and proceeded to my room. After a few minutes and another glass of fizz, okay, we're counting now,
We are.
I simply couldn't get the cake out of my mind, and I sat on the balcony in complete sat on the balcony in a complete daze as my wife tried to discuss when and where we were going to eat and what our plans might be for the rest of the week. She was constantly using phrases such as, "Are you listening to me? Have you heard anything I've said? What is the matter with you?" But it was no good. The cake had taken over my whole being. As Mandy disappeared to the toilet, I spied my chance, leapt out of the room shouting, "I won't be long." I was just fixated on the cake. Tracing my steps down the staircase to the floor below, my heart was pounding, my breathing heavy. As I rounded the last turn and exited the staircase, I stopped dead in my tracks. The cake was still there for 10 to 12 people, and being 3 sheets to the wind, I once again quickly surveyed the area and rapidly scooped up the cake and beat a hasty retreat. I moved as quickly as I could and thankfully had remembered my room number this time. I rushed back upstairs and into the room, plonking the delicious-looking cake on the balcony table. Mandy, just back from the loo, looked rather confused, but I said I had ordered it as a thank you for all that she has done and endured recently. And although it wasn't particularly romantic, I knew that she liked a good cake. She burst into tears of joy and gratitude and quickly darted to the kitchen for plates and cutlery. Several minutes later, half the cake had disappeared along with more fizz. We're still counting. As we continued to unwind, Mandy was so pleased with the cake. As my dad had constantly said to me, "Remember, lad, happy wife, happy life." He was right, as usual. Father Simon and the Holy Gathering, I need forgiveness for removing the cake, commonly known as stealing, from its resting place, and the deception I bestowed on the beautiful Mandy, as well as the hotel guests who would now be a cake short. Serves 10 to 12. Finally, forgiveness is sought for lowering the standards of this gorgeous resort. The mitigating circumstances is the very high consumption of alcohol. I don't think, officer, that counts as mitigating circumstances. No. My body is simply not used to it. I could have done it at school. I don't think you could have done. But not as a 64-year-old retirement contemplating old geezer. I would also like to apologise to my wife. You thought it was a romantic gesture, but it was also grand theft. I hope this confession is up to the very high standard of your excellent programme and you'll read it out one day. Well, one day came and one day is this day. Mike and Mandy with a story of alcohol, retirement, a cake, which Mike pretended was a romantic gesture, but actually he'd just stolen it. Sister Susie.
Well, I was with Mike for quite a while there. You know, I like a cake, you know, and if it is just sitting there, then, you know, what is it doing there? But the problem I have with this is that he lied to his wife and said that he'd ordered it just for her. And, you know, maybe he should have done that, but maybe he should actually have done it rather than stolen it. And it is for lying to his wife and pretending that he had made this grand gesture when actually he just wanted a bit of cake. I can't forgive him, I'm afraid, Mike.
Grand Theft Gatto, that's what this is.
Oh, very good.
What do you say, Brother Matthew?
Well, I mean, some people may frown on the idea of taking the cake. Not me, because who's leaving a cake out in the corridor? That doesn't make any sense. And expecting it still to be there when you go back. No point in that at all. And also, maybe it was a gift from the universe to them. Could be. Think about it. How does that work? It works by just leaving the gatto in the corridor. And at least he didn't emigrate to Canada halfway through that.
No.
So that already puts him above yesterday's. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Do you forgive Mike, please? The people's verdict on 61054. The first word is Simon. It's the people's verdict. Does Mike get any forgiveness at all? It's entirely down to you. 61054. But just before the news, we had a confession from Mike about how he stole a cake whilst on holiday in Malta, a cake that served 10 to 12 people, and gave it to his wife and said it was a loving gesture, a cake he'd bought to thank her for all her hard work and care. It was stolen goods. It was Grand Theft Gatto is what it was.
Good.
Okay, people's verdict is in. Here it comes.
So Andy Thompson in Shropshire says, forgiven. I'm with Matt on this one. I'm sure the real recipients of the cake were disappointed, but probably got another one. At least Mandy was happy, and that's the important thing. Phil of Herne Bay says, forgiven, but there could have been a cacophony of discordant people at their door had CCTV pointed to him. And Big Kev in Derby says, forgiven. I did a similar thing. I found a massive cake in the hotel foyer, took it upstairs to present to my wife, but when cutting it, found it was a false one. My wife wasn't impressed, so please forgive me too.
Okay, well, it's not entirely down to me, but thank you very much indeed for all the verdicts, and thank you for the confessions. And if you have one, don't forget, we can exchange it for a smart speaker if we use your confession on air. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Well, it's 5:45. Time for the drinks trolley. In need of some refreshment, that's what we need. Something exciting. What have you got for us today, Sister Susie?
Well, I've got something I think Matt will approve of.
Oh, yes.
May have had before. A Spanish gin from Malaga.
Oh, yeah.
Larios.
Larios.
And tonic.
And tonic, of course.
So
Very
how would
delicious.
if I ordered a double in a Spanish bar?
Un doble Larios con tonic. I'm not sure about the tonic bit, but they'll get it.
Okay, with ice and lemon.
Con hielo y
No, the whole
limón.
thing, the whole thing.
No,
Yeah.
right.
Start again.
Doble Larios con tonic, con hielo y limón.
There you go.
Wow.
It sounds a whole lot better. That's the highlight of the show. Okay, today's confession comes from Freddie. Going to give it a certificate 12, I think, or maybe it's PG 12, something like that. Father Simon and the Confessional Collective. This event took place in 1988 in Salford, which is the city I was born in and resided in, and I was a newly qualified electrician and still a bit green. One particular place of work was a local funeral director's, that's where we are, which was one of the larger ones at the time. I had visited there a couple of times previously to lend a hand to one of the older, more experienced electricians that worked there. This particular day, I was informed by the boss that I was going alone to install a ventilation system. My boss met me on site and took me into a part of the building that I had never attended before, the Chapel of Rest. What could go wrong? Inside, there were 4 cubicles, all made of wood panelling, sat alone in a church-like room. He explained that I had to install a grill in each of them, which would be connected to this is where I lose it a bit, a flexible duct, which would be installed in the ceiling void and then couple up to an extract system at a later date. Easy job, I thought, and went to get my tools from the van. Once returned, I opened the first cubicle and removed the tiles from the grid-type ceiling, clambered up the step ladders and began to cut the hole in the partition wall to the next cubicle. Once completed, I moved to cubicle 2 and completed the work and repeated the work. When I pushed open the door for cubicle 3, I was greeted with a large coffin on a silver stand, with the lid removed and a smartly suited dead person, arms folded across their chest. Let's call him Keith.
Let's.
Although I had seen the dead before, this was the first time alone, and I started getting very nervous as the other cubicles were empty. I went to see the funeral director at his office and asked, please could you move the coffin into an empty cubicle? And unfortunately for me, he said he could not, as the family members were due to visit that day and pay their respects, and they have free rein to visit at any time. So I reluctantly carried on. Whilst reaching over the coffin to remove the ceiling tile, a few blobs of damaged tile fell onto Keith in the coffin. In a blind panic and not being sure what to do for the best, I nipped to the cleaner's cupboard outside and got a vacuum cleaner out. Carefully, I started to suck up the white specks from the velvet material in the coffin around the head, but there was a small piece on Keith's cheek.
No.
Diligently, I tried to suck it up, but the vacuum cleaner attached its nozzle to Keith's cheek. I quickly pulled it off, but it also pulled off some of the makeup, which I didn't realise they'd used on Keith, trying to hide the much lighter patch of the chap's red face. I rolled up some paper towels to wipe his cheek, but this made it worse. Keith now looked more like adamant. Anyway, I thought, I've nearly finished here. Let's just get the tiles back in the ceiling and get out. Unfortunately, in my haste, I hadn't realised I'd left my large screwdriver in the ceiling void and caught it with the tile, knocking it through the open ceiling. Like a slow-motion movie, it fell and landed slap bang on Keith's forehead and bounced off, settling by his folded arms. When disembarking my stepladders, I noticed it had left a large flap of skin, which was protruding from Keith like a little devil's horn.
Okay.
Oh, no.
No, that's not good. Either. No.
In total panic, I tried to press it down with my thumb, but it just kept popping back up again.
Would do, yeah.
Now, in desperation, thinking the family might arrive at any time soon, I did what I had to do, Father Simon. I quickly fetched a tube of silicone from my van and squeezed out a small blob under the flap of skin and firmly pressed down with the butt of my hammer.
Oh, right.
Holding it for 30 seconds.
No.
Okay,
To my
30
relief, the flap had stuck back down.
Yeah.
I gathered up my tools and fled the scene.
Yeah.
Back at work, I told nobody of my day from hell and have told nobody for over 30 years. I now feel it's time to shed this terrible day from my memories of my younger work events. I can't really ask for forgiveness from the poor chap, Keith, whose face I altered, but maybe forgiveness from his family visitors later that day, who might have been wondering who applied the makeup like that and why he looked like adamant. Or asking, what was that thing on his forehead? Due to the demise, anyway, I tried to make him presentable, so I hope I'm forgiven. I don't expect forgiveness from the sisters, but hoping brother Matt has some sympathy.
Yep.
I mean, it's usually a good bet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see where we go with today's funereal confession. I mean, your heart goes out to Freddie, doesn't it? He's trying to do his best, but it didn't end up very well.
Well, he was trying to do his best, and it wasn't his fault that man was in that room. And why couldn't they move him to a different room? They had three other rooms that were empty. Or they could have just put the lid on the coffin, surely, and therefore, if a screwdriver fell out of the ceiling,
yes,
it would have hit the outside of the coffin. So I do feel for Freddie here, but I am an electrician's daughter, so I do know what he was talking about, and it was an easy job,
yes,
and he just made a muck of it. So for that reason, I'm not going to forgive him.
It wasn't the cough that carried him off, it was the coffin that carried him off in.
That's so true.
Thank you. A little wisdom there from the two Ronnies.
Yes.
Brother Matthew.
Well, we are certainly in 70s sitcom land here, aren't we? I love this confession. Very, very funny. As soon as he got the vacuum cleaner out,
yes, it's the proximity of the vacuum cleaner and Keith.
Too close. Too close.
And then I'm going to leave the screwdriver up there. No, that's not a good sign. But good use of the silicone. Well done on that, Freddie. Yeah, just who'd have thought that would work? And it's their fault for getting their work done. Why would they get the work done when they've got bodies there? Shouldn't have done that, should they? Maybe it's the funeral director's fault. Yes, definitely them. Definitely not the dead. Can't blame them. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Don't quite understand your reasoning there.
No.
But it's the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Freddie for his funeral confession? That's what we need to know. 61054. First word is Simon. Just before the news, we had a confession from Freddie, an electrician installing a ventilation system at the funeral director's. And then, unfortunately, a few blobs of damaged tile settled on Keith, the dead person in the coffin. Got the vacuum cleaner, then sorted that out. Then a screwdriver, flap of skin, silicone glue, end of the hammer.
Okay.
Everyone was fine in the end, but Freddie hasn't apologised to anybody for 30 years. People's verdict is in, here it comes.
So Ricky in Chester says, not forgiven. As soon as the vacuum cleaner turned up, I knew it was all going downhill. Why on earth did he think he could suck the piece of tile off his cheek? What a ridiculous idea. But Mitch says, forgiven. I love this confession. So funny. It was the funeral director's fault. Why didn't they move the body? Or why couldn't the work wait until there wasn't an open casket dead body in the room? Keith did his best. And finally, forgiven. The funeral director could have helped the situation by simply putting the lid on the coffin. That's from Lucy in Cornwall, listening while travelling home from work on the bus and actually laughing out loud at this and getting some very strange looks from fellow passengers.
Excellent. That's what Confessions is all about. Thank you very much indeed for the verdicts. If you have a tale you fancy exchanging it for a smart speaker, let us know and send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Meantime, it's confession time at 5:47 and we need something enticing, I think, from the drinks trolley. What have you selected, Suze?
Well, I thought it might go well with Nigel's ginger and pear loaf, and I thought we could have a spiced rum and ginger ale.
Fancy that, Matt? It's your rum night as well.
It is a bit of rum night tonight, yes.
Okay, very good. Well, 2 of those and a bitter lemon, please.
Oh, why not?
For myself.
Yummy.
Today's confession comes from Jim. Jim, thank you very much indeed. Another smart speaker handed out. Jim gets it. Simon and team, I hope you can find me some peace and forgiveness for my confession. In 1978, when I was 18 years old, I may have sinned. It wasn't intentional, you understand. It just sort of happened. My guess is that sisters Holly and Susie will think very badly of me. Judgy people they are, unlike Matt.
Yes.
If I'm ever up on a charge somewhere, I'd like him on the jury for certain.
Quite right.
Imagine that if you ever get called for jury service.
Can't
Be
wait.
very, very popular.
Yeah.
Wow.
So here we go. My mum, who loved a game of bingo at our local social club on a Saturday night, used to play, as we used to call it, the one-arm bandit. Or for your younger listeners, the fruit machine, or the slot machine, the pokies, as they say in Australia. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
No.
Pokies.
Yeah, that's what they are. Standing beside her one night, I noticed that she had dropped a £5 note out of her handbag. I, of course, picked it up and was about to give it to her back when she said, "Oh, I've run out of money." And here it is, Father Simon, the moment of truth. I don't know why, but out of my mouth came, "Oh, it's okay, Mum. I've been given a bonus this week. Here, have this £5 on me and carry on playing.
Oh.
And if you win, we can go halves."
Go halves, yeah.
Yes.
Quite right.
Well, she went to the bar to change the note into coins, and she told everyone, including my sisters, what I'd done and what a lovely boy I was.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I must tell you, I was the only boy and the youngest to 7 sisters. I could do no wrong in my mum's eyes. They, of course, were suspicious, but went along with it. After all, as my mum used to say, James is a good boy. James is your model. I bet that went down really, really well. Just like in Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I was the Joseph and they were the indignant siblings, although obviously they didn't attack me and hand me over to passing camel herders.
That's true.
Because that didn't happen a lot back in 1978. Well, things took another step, perhaps for the worse, when she won £25 with the money that I had generously given her and insisted on giving me £12.50. I tried to decline, but she insisted. I said, "No, Mother, really, I'll just take the original £5. So I took the £5 from her that I had given her out of the kindness of my heart. Well, what can I do? I accepted and she gave me the 20 quid. So effectively, at this point, I'd stolen £5 twice.
Oh, right, yes.
I took the £5 from her. You understand?
No.
So she took. So she gave her the first £5 back, didn't
I
he?
took the £5 from her that I had given her out of the kindness of my heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
I accepted and she gave me the 20 quid and I handed that back. But I kept
And now
£5.
I've given you a £5 and you give me back a tenner, and then I give you another £5.
Basically, I had stolen £5 twice. Years later, she would tell the story of what a great son I was to family and friends. And although I wanted to own up as to what actually had taken place, I couldn't bring myself to admit it and disappoint her. I am now 65 and I've lived with this guilt for nearly 50 years. I beg forgiveness from you all as I was a young man and my parents' gift from God being the only boy, much to the annoyance of my elder sisters. Well, I suspect a lot of the way you're going to, nice fade, a lot of the way you're going to respond to this will be where you are, whether you're the sole sibling amongst and surrounded by the others. So that's what I'm thinking. So, but fancy living there. I mean, it's not the worst sin, but there's shame and embarrassment because his mum made such a big thing about it.
Yeah.
He's kept it quiet for 50 years. Sister Susie, what do you say?
Oh, I do feel a bit sorry for Jim here because I can't believe that his mum kept bringing up that story again and again and again as the time that he was that excellent boy. Just how embarrassing must you have been to know that your mum, all your mum thought of was that you were so good, and actually you would have broken her, wouldn't you?
His sisters knew, didn't they? The sisters absolutely knew that there's no way he would have done that.
Yeah, but I feel like I am the youngest, and when I was younger, if my mum had dropped a £5, I probably would have done the same thing. So, and you know, he feels so bad, and he's now 65. So I feel like that's long enough to hold that guilt. I'm going to forgive you, Jim.
Okay, all right. So he took the £5.
Yeah, gave her the £5.
Yeah, and
she gave him £12.50. He then took another £5.
Brother Matt, what do you say?
I say I'm going to forgive because he probably was a great son anyway. We don't know, but I'm going to say he was.
Yes.
And his sisters sound pretty cynical to me, so I'm going to say that's what they were. And also, she wouldn't have won the 25 quid if it weren't for him picking up the £5. So, you know, so she won. So she gets the 25
But you should
quid.
just have said you've dropped a £5.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, he could have done that. Or, in a way, wasn't it better to go down this? And what a bonding journey that was for them and indeed for all of us. So, as we get into the Bee Gees, I'm going to say forgiven.
61054, first word is Simon. Do you forgive Jim for it was a £5, but he
gave it back
twice,
and then she gave him.
That's the one. People's verdict. Thank you. Before the news, though, we had a confession from Jim, living by numbers. He's playing bingo. Well, his mum is at the slot machines. She dropped a £5. He picked it up and said, "Here, I've had a bonus. Why don't you have this? And then we can split the winnings." And then she told everybody what a marvellous and wonderful son he was. 7 sisters are going, Don't think so. People's verdict, here it comes.
So Tom says, gotta forgive him. Ultimately, he knew where his bread was buttered. It got him in his mum's good book. So it's a win-win, if you ask me. Michelle says, not forgiven. He took money from his mother. Poor thing. I feel sorry for the sisters. But Johnny in Norwich says, forgiven. I love this confession. Frankly, if he hadn't given his mother the £5 from the floor, someone else would have got it. He won, his mum won, so no harm done. Yes.
Maybe. Okay, we'll go with that one. Thank you very much for the verdicts. Thank you for the confessions. And send yours, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.